So, what I say in the second main point of my paper is, situation has changed a little bit in recent times because this problem, I forgot to say, why did people go to things like adjustment costs? Precisely because they could not assume the full employment of labor, and then adjustment cost theory, as originally presented, does not need the assumption of full employment of labor. Firms can increase capital and labor at the same time, but because there are these additional adjustment costs, they do not want to expand indefinitely. So the fact that there is this additional adjustment cost yields a definite speed of expansion of firms, in spite of the fact that one is conceding that there is unemployment and that firms can change employment besides the amount of capital they employ. Now, as I said, things are changing slightly in recent periods because the Gordian knot, as I write, of this issue of what do we assume about employment is cut by assuming full employment. And that is done in real business cycle models, and it is done in modern so-called new Keynesian models, where the only difference is that there are some rigidities, although these rigidities are again freely chosen by workers, so I do not think that in these new Keynesian models you can speak about involuntary unemployment. It's still voluntary unemployment, although maybe due to misperceptions or things like that. And then, once you assume the full employment of labor, you can assume adjustment costs. The only difference it makes is that because there will be an extra cost in expanding capital to reach the new optimal level of capital, then the rate of interest, the equilibrium rate of interest, will have to be a little lower than it would be in the absence of adjustment cost, because one has also to cover the fact that one has a loss of income due to adjustment costs. Now, I think this is why the first point is essentially a repetition of things that I had said in my book of 2004 called The General Equilibrium of Capital and Macroeconomics, where there's a whole chapter dedicated to how investment theory has developed after Keynes, trying to demonstrate that all these presentations of investment are indefensible. On this second point, I think what I say in this paper is new, and I argue that in these models, in these models, real business cycle and new Keynesian models, which are full employment models even in the short period, there is no investment function. Investment is what Bliss, in his 1975 book, had called an accommodating value. And the point of these models seems to be the following. It is very clearly enunciated, I think, in what I understand to be the most recent advanced macro textbook by Michael Wickens, who teaches in York University in England. And it's the 2008 book by Princeton Press. And he says that Keynes was wrong. Keynes was insisting on flow equilibrium, while in fact what is necessary and important is stock equilibrium. In other words, equality between supply and demand for resources, given stocks of resources. The moment you have continuous stock equilibrium, flow equilibria are taken care of by these stock equilibria. The idea seems to be the following. You have, in a given period, given amount of labor, given capital goods, which by now have been produced. They're there. They have to find employment. You can find prices for these capital goods, which, considering expectations, justify their being bought and employed by firms. Then you reach the full employment of all resources, existing resources. So you have a product. Part of this product is bought by consumers, and the rest is capital goods, which add themselves to the existing capital goods minus depreciation. So again, the next period you have given labor, given capital goods, again you reach stock equilibrium, and so on and so forth. The only condition to be added is that the prices at which the new capital goods, which which add themselves to the old ones at the end of the period, they must be sold at cost-covering prices. Okay? Then what these models argue is that these models assume an intertemporal equilibrium, and in each period there is this stock equilibrium, and also the stock equilibria are in such a succession that prices cover costs. So it's a pool of prices which are cost-covering prices. This is essentially what intertemporal equilibria do. Now, what I argue in my paper is that it is true, this is what intertemporal equilibria do. But the only reason why intertemporal equilibria are allowed to do this is because they have complete futures markets and the auctioneer. Both things. So what you have is a simultaneous equilibration of initial stocks and future stocks. Simultaneous. Now, on the contrary, assume that reaching equilibrium takes time. The moment you assume that, and you assume there isn't future markets, firms cannot establish stock equilibrium without knowing at what prices they sell the products. Because they cannot know the value of marginal products of the factors they are demanding until they know the price at which they will sell the product. And then this must be discovered. This must be discovered by trial and error. They have to produce, see at what price they can sell, and so on and so forth. This means that in order to establish stock equilibrium, firms must reach flow equilibria. In other words, they must know at what price they are selling. And so, the trick of these models is to introduce futures markets, complete futures markets. Perfect foresight makes no sense, so I won't even discuss that. By the way, Professor Bellino's paper this morning quoted Bliss to the effect, we do not live in the world where prices are correctly foreseen, so that is enough for me. Reaching equilibrium, it is enough to admit that reaching equilibrium takes time and this construction falls. You must have flow equilibrium in order to have stock equilibrium. And therefore, you must have firms which are demanding newly produced capital goods. And these firms are doing investment. Now, the only way you could avoid then introducing an investment function is by treating these firms, which are producing for 2 periods in the future, right? Because they are demanding capital goods, so they must be producing for the next period. The only way would be to treat them just like you're treating firms now. That is to say, firms which will then have certain capital goods to sell. But then you would have to assume, again, that you have firms further in the future and so on and so forth. In other words, you would have to be assuming complete futures markets. On this basis, I argue, these recent macroeconomic models are in fact doing something which is totally illegitimate. They're saying that, thank you, they're saying that they can rely on modern value theory, by which they mean intertemporal equilibrium theory, while in fact they cannot, because they want to apply what they say to the real world. In the real world, there isn't complete futures markets, there isn't the auctioneer, and general equilibrium theorists know it. And in fact, general equilibrium theory is indeed prices. And Frank Kahn, for example, has said it very clearly, we don't know how the invisible market really works, and Bliss has admitted that prices are not correctly foreseen, and other people too, I could quote like Malambo or Arrow, etc., they all know that the world does not behave like an intertemporal equilibrium assumes. So, conclusion of the second point of my paper, in fact, we cannot do without an investment function, because we have firms which are deciding without having in their own turn the guarantee of stock equilibrium for their products. And then, third point of my